About a fifth of the world's chip designers sit in India. The engineers who lay out the processors inside your phone, your laptop, your car, a huge share of them work in Bangalore and Hyderabad, inside the design centers of NVIDIA, AMD, Qualcomm, and Intel. And yet, for all that talent, India has never manufactured a leading chip. Not one. The brains, but none of the factories. In 2026, that finally starts to change. In a dusty patch of Gujarat called Dholera, the Tata Group is building India's first real semiconductor fab, with help from Taiwan and tools from the one company even China can't buy from freely. So can India go from designing the world's chips to actually making them? Let's get into it. First, the gap we're closing. India is a design superpower and a manufacturing newcomer. It supplies the people who design the world's chips, but captures almost none of the value because the wafers themselves are made in Taiwan, Korea, and the US. The fab in Dholera is the first serious attempt to change that. Tata Electronics is building India's first commercial 300mm wafer fab, a roughly $11 billion project designed to produce 50,000 wafers a month at full capacity. And Tata isn't doing it alone. Its partner is Powerchip, or PSMC, a Taiwanese foundry that's built and run fabs for decades. As of early 2026, the site is about half built, with cleanroom installation underway, and the company is targeting its first silicon by late this year. So what will it actually make? That's where the strategy gets smart. Here's the part people get wrong. They hear India's first fab and ask, can it make a 2-nanometer chip like TSMC? No, and it isn't trying to. Dholera is built around mature process nodes, 28 nanometers, and older steps like 40, 55, 90, and 110. To someone chasing the bleeding edge, that sounds unambitious. It's actually the right call, and here's why. The leading edge gets the headlines, but mature nodes are where most of the world's chips actually live. The power management chip in your phone, the display driver behind your screen, the microcontroller in your car, almost none of that needs a cutting-edge transistor. It needs to be reliable, cheap, and made in enormous volume. That market is huge, growing with every electric car and connected device, and it's exactly what Dholera targets. Power management chips, display drivers, microcontrollers, and some computing logic for automotive, mobile, and communications. And every great chip nation started here. Taiwan, Korea, and China all began at mature nodes and climbed. You learn to run a fab on the nodes you can afford to get wrong. India is choosing to walk before it runs, on purpose. Now, the uncomfortable truth underneath all of this. Nobody builds a fab alone, and India can't either. Two outside players make Dholera possible, and both are worth watching. The first is the partner, Taiwan's Powerchip. A fab isn't just a building. It's thousands of tuned process recipes, the secret know-how of turning sand into working chips at high yield. You can't buy that on the open market. PSMC is transferring it, which is how India skips decades of painful trial and error. The second is the equipment. In May 2026, Tata signed a deal with ASML, the Dutch company that holds a near-total monopoly on the lithography machines every fab on Earth depends on. And here's the detail that matters more than any number. ASML's most advanced machines are the same ones the West blocks from selling to China. The single most strategic toolmaker in the industry, the one governments fight over, is choosing to equip India's first fab. That is not a normal commercial deal. It's a signal that the world wants a chip base that isn't Taiwan and isn't China, and it has picked India. The flip side, India is now dependent on Dutch tools and Taiwanese know-how. Independence, for now, runs through other people's technology. And a fab on its own is useless. A finished wafer still has to be cut, packaged, and tested before it's worth anything. And that back end, called OSAT, is where India is moving fastest. Start with memory. Micron built a packaging plant in Sanand, Gujarat, and it's not a someday project. It hit full commercial production in early 2026, and chips packaged in India now ship worldwide. Right next door, Sanand has become India's busiest chip cluster. Kaynes opened an assembly and test plant in March 2026, and a joint venture of India's CG Power, Japan's Renesas, and Thailand's Stars is building another. Up in Assam, Tata is standing up a site for advanced packaging like flip chip. There's a reason packaging comes first. It's far cheaper to enter than a wafer fab. It employs a lot of people. And advanced packaging is where more and more of a chip's real value is moving anyway. Behind all of it sits the India Semiconductor Mission, a government program putting up around $10 billion and covering up to half the cost of approved plants. The strategy is clear. Build the back end and the workforce now, and let the front end fab grow into it. So let's be honest about the limits because the headlines won't be. India is not about to catch TSMC. While Dholera targets 28 nanometers, TSMC is shipping 2. That's well over a decade of progress and several of the hardest generations in history sitting in between. Closing that gap isn't a plan. It's a multi-decade marathon, and most countries that tried never finished it. The dependencies are real too. The tools come from the Netherlands and the US. The process recipes come from Taiwan. And the subtle one, India has the world's best chip designers, but designing a chip and running a high-yield factory are completely different skills. A fab needs operators, process engineers, and technicians. A manufacturing workforce India is building from scratch. There's the physical reality too. A fab drinks millions of liters of ultra-pure water a day and demands uninterrupted power, in a region not famous for either. And yield, the share of chips that come out working, is brutal. Ramping a new fab to profitability routinely takes years. None of this means India fails. It means the honest scoreboard isn't, can it make a flagship phone chip? It's, can it run a real fab at a real yield at all? And that answer is still being written. So here's the verdict. The way to read this isn't to ask whether India's first fab will rival TSMC. It won't, not for a long time. It's to follow who's betting, because that's the part that's genuinely new. Taiwan's Powerchip is handing over real process technology, and ASML, the most strategic equipment maker on the planet, the gatekeeper whose best machines are kept out of China by treaty, is choosing to equip India's very first fab. When the people who control the choke points of this entire industry decide to hand you the keys, that tells you the geopolitics have shifted underneath the technology. The world has decided it needs a chip base outside Taiwan and China, and it has placed its bet on India. But the smart version of this story isn't triumphant, it's patient. India is doing exactly what every successful chip nation did first. Start at mature nodes, win the packaging business, train a workforce, then compound, generation after generation. The win condition here was never 2 nanometer by 2030. It's a working fab, a real supply chain, and a manufacturing base that simply exists where there was nothing. Designed in India has been true for years. Made in India, that part is only just beginning. And after a decade of false starts, this is the first time the smart money is building alongside it. If you want the real engineering and economics behind the chip industry, who actually makes what, who depends on whom, and why it matters, this channel takes it apart one piece at a time. No hype, no hot takes, just how the silicon really gets built and who really profits when it does. Subscribe if that's the version you want and stay with it, because the most important shifts in this industry don't happen at the bleeding edge. They happen in the boring, brutally hard layers underneath, where the whole thing is actually decided. Thanks for watching.